What happens when they're lying? Someone is lying against you. We can deal with that in a certain way. If you're interested in this area of the law, stay tuned. This is the video for you. My name is Attorney Lance Fryrear. I'm a defense attorney in Linwood, Washington. My law firm's been defending people charged with crimes all throughout Washington State for more than 25 years, and I'm putting out these videos to help educate the public. So if you find this useful, please like and please subscribe. More people get to see it. More people get the help they need. I'm just jumping right into it. Oftentimes, somebody lies against somebody else to get that person in trouble. And as a criminal defense attorney, you might not be surprised that I have a lot of clients who go, that person's lying. And oftentimes they're lying about very big things that can land people in prison, not for years, but for decades. And in these situations, if someone's lying against you, there's some principles that we need to use to try to help defeat the lie and get us out of this problem. I think principle number one is spotting the lie. Now, you may know the person's lying, but how can we suggest to a prosecutor, if we don't have exactly opposite evidence, that the person might be lying? And I think what is more well known over time is the higher the level of detail in the statement by the person who's making the statement, the more likely that person is lying. And the theory goes something like this. When you're trying to put something over on someone, you come up with a lot more details to the story because it must be true, right? You know, if I were trying to tell a story to somebody, I might start talking about, what color the tablecloth was, or what the temperature was, or how the wind was blowing, or the color of the eyeglasses someone had, and just things that don't make a lot of sense. Human nature is you remember the important things, but you don't remember every little detail. And there's one good example that a creator that I follow on YouTube has a very good example of this, and that's the Sherry Papini story. That's the real life Gone Girl. And so Dreading is a station that I follow, and Dreading does a whole lot of coverage of true crime, real crime, and Dreading has a really good video about Sherry Papini. That's the real life Gone Girl. And you'll notice if you watch the interrogation, she comes up with every possible detail under the sun about where she was captive. This bolt was rusty, and this nail was here, and I smelled this, and I heard this, and it's just word vomit of detail after detail. And the reason why she's doing that is because she's trying to make herself more believable. So what we do, if we've got a statement from someone that's got way too many details, oftentimes we'll go to a prosecutor and say, does this make sense that they would know that much? Now, sadly, lots of time law enforcement thinks that more detail means it's true, right? Especially if we have a young person accuser saying someone did something really bad to them. Well, it must be true because remember all these details. And sometimes that just isn't the case. So number one is spotting the lie. Number two, how do we deal with this? Well, we have to remember that the greater the motivation someone has to lie, right, the more likely it is that they'll maintain the lie, but only until that motivation is gone. So it's sort of a time thing. So let's say someone is really mad at you and they claim you did something wrong to them, that you beat them up or you flatten their tires or who knows what it is. And if you get charged with a crime in that situation, as time goes on, things happen in that accuser's life, right? They have more people they hate, more people they're mad at. It's not so important to them anymore. And their motivation to maintain the lie goes down. And therefore, as time passes, eventually they're going to have to, the prosecutor's going to reach out to them and get more details about what happened. And then it begins to dawn on them that there's going to be a lot of work involved in maintaining this lie, and there's going to be some risk involved in maintaining this lie. And what we find is the people that are lying often just fade away. They just fade away because as time passes, what created the motivation to make that lie disappears. Now, the motivation is big enough, a jilted lover, something like that, where they're just, or parent representation, where they're just going to try to crush you regardless, they might maintain it. But usually over time, if it's an absolute lie and they don't believe it, because some people, remember, they believe their lies, some people, okay, those are the really dangerous ones. But if they know they're lying, as time passes, they're usually not going to stick with it because there's not enough in it for them to go through the risk. I think number 3 is what people mainly think about of how we deal with the lie, and that's with defense interviews. Right? Defense interviews is one way we can see lies crumble. Now, by the time we get to a defense interview in a criminal case, the case is pretty old. It might be 6 months old, might be a year old. So things are working in our favor at that point, right? That motivation may be going down. Additionally, just like in law enforcement, when law enforcement wants to interview a suspect, usually they interview everybody else first so they can get all the information to try to catch the suspect in lies. Well, us defense attorneys do the same thing. If the primary alleged victim in the case is lying, or even if they're not, we're going to talk to them last. We're going to talk to everybody else first so we can get enough information to try to have their story disintegrate in a defense interview. And the cool thing is usually the prosecutor's sitting right there in the defense interview. I can think of a case that we did in my firm probably 10 or 15 years ago where the prosecutor would not budge. It's assault in the 2nd degree. It's a felony. You're going to prison. You're toast, is what they're saying to our client. We finally got to the defense interview of the alleged victim, and they were so obviously lying and so poor at maintaining the fake details he had come up with. The prosecutor instantaneously reduced it to a simple misdemeanor, deferred sentence, dismissed case eventually, all based upon that defense interview. Now, that whole time, our client had been telling us that this was a lie, right? But we had to go through the process, and everything sort of lined up, right? There were too many details to begin with. Time passed and the motivation was different. They couldn't remember all the details by the time we got to them, and we talked to enough other people that their lie crumbled. So it's a complicated process because, as we all know, we can't prove a negative, right? Unless we have an alibi. We were in Iowa. We weren't knocking off the grocery store in Linwood, right? And we could prove it. Unless we have an alibi, we can't prove a negative. But if someone's lying against you, it's really frustrating. So I want you to remember these 3 things and realize that in the long run, usually the truth comes out. So you'll find that useful. Please like it, please subscribe. More people get to see it, more people get the help they need, and more importantly, if you got a criminal problem in Washington State, feel free to reach out to our firm. If we get on board, we'll listen to what happened, we'll identify a way forward, and we will be there for you. Thank you.